Nothing we say here is investment advice, legal advice, life advice, or representative of the views of the organization we are part of or affiliated with. See chainabstracted.com for more information.
Hi, welcome to Chain Abstracted. I'm Jared. I'm the head of content at Near Foundation.
Hi, I'm Alton. I'm founder of an ecosystem. Talking to Erica is interesting because it's, we've been chatting with a lot of technical folks and founders of like protocols and apps and stuff like that. But it's really nice to talk to someone that runs a community in a sense that like the community is not part of the protocol, right? So very, very community, like chain abstracted community in such a way. And Erica does that really nicely with Cosmos, Near, Polygon, all that, like all those like L1s, L2s. And I think she brings a unique perspective with her background.
Absolutely. And I think she dropped so much great knowledge for anybody who's in the Web3 space, especially for not only just networking and building out communities and growing like your kind of self-brand. She also did this thing, and I it's basically get out there and like communicate, connect, and then curate your network. And I think that you can really tell with her success that she's done this really well, and it's very thought out.
Yeah, we loved it. And if you're new to crypto, or if you have been in crypto for a while and trying to kind of, I understand like some engineers looking to kind of get into becoming founders, becoming, more like taking more business-led or business development-led initiatives, definitely should watch this and learn from it.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for listening. Hope you enjoy.
We know you're the founder of Crypto Seoul, but maybe give us a bit of a background how, maybe I haven't asked this before. I know you've been to Stanford for master's, but love to hear what your journey into crypto, right? I mean, I know, yeah, that I'd love to learn a bit more about.
Sure. So hi, I'm Erica. I run Crypto Seoul, Crypto Planet, Little Asia, Eat Seoul, all sorts of things, community related, events related. I started my crypto journey in 2017, way early, like in March in 2017. And before that, I was in various industries like telco, banking, academia, and what else? I was in media for internship at some point. So like various and law firms, just like as a clerk as well, just kind of like seeing what the diverse industries are like. But mostly my main focus was career in Korea Telecom, which is big telco in South Korea. So I was in that corporate world for some time. Not honestly, it wasn't as exciting as crypto, but I got to see some of the, how the businesses are run. And then I took maternity leave for some time, and I was rethinking about my career, and like thinking about how I can better my career or how I can transition my career. And I thought it was a good timing to actually do a redo of my career, basically, and trying to start from scratch, maybe something that can get me excited, right? So I was looking for various opportunities in startup space, and randomly my friend suggested that I attend the seminar with him, and it was a very rare crypto seminar back then in South Korea. I think it was the only one I think that was available back then. And so I paid money to go there, and that's just like the rest is history, because I got connected to some of the major players in South Korea back then, and they tried to hire me. And as like the ICO, how should I say, communicator, or like, the pitch, the person that does global pitches, right? Because I'm bilingual and I'm like a communicator. And so they wanted to hire me. And I was kind of thinking, well, this industry where it seems very nascent and everything's very raw. And honestly, it does seem a little scammy, but people need me for some reason, and I don't know why. So I want to check it out, right? So if I want to go where I can feel needed and I could add value, and I thought it was a good opportunity to see like where it goes. So I took some, dive-ins. I did my own YouTube search all around back in the day, and all I could, dig up. And now, I was like, okay, well, I cannot trust any single project back then. So why not just have my own community brand and kind of start from there to gain more sovereignty and kind of more independence. And I can decide for myself who I want to work with. And so that's how it all started.
That's a really cool like origin story. But you said something that I think is so impactful, especially in modern day, which is you kind of you focused on creating your own brand, right? Because you always hear that thing like I come from a corporate world too. It's like your net worth is your network or stuff like that, right? But I do think that in Web3 specifically, founders and people who have a good brand can actually get more stuff done because of that. So when you talk to founders and your stuff, what do you think is like the best way for a founder or somebody to work on their personal brand to grow?
At least anybody, like not only founders, but everybody should have their own personal brand. I think for me, it started with filtering a lot of people, networking a lot, but then finding my own, I guess, comfort zone and finding like the good quality people. And you need a lot of practice for this, but I think I met thousands, not even thousands, like hundreds of thousands of people, and by now, and now I can kind of see that person for like 10 seconds and tell if this person's a good fit for me, or this person has good intentions, good intents, right, and whatnot. And I think you just have to do a lot of networking to see if this person's in it for the longer run or for the shorter run. And I think founders also should network within their own, have a good sense of that as well, because they may get into the wrong, crowd, for example. And when you're making the right connections in the beginning, it's really important to make the right initial connections, right? Because otherwise you may, in the longer term, you may end up in issues, negative issues with like, people who does wrongdoings and whatnot. So I think having that sense of filter is also a personal brand. It kind of keeps like it colors who you are, right, and what you're going for. And I think that kind of like barrier is sort of in a way you should be open to everybody, but not too open to everybody, if you know what I mean. And I think that's a really good color to have as a personal brand. But also, like, of course, social channels, I mean, it's inevitable. I think as this podcast too, but we need to keep ourselves like open to the public, also sharing our insights, and also, sharing what we are going for, insights, but not only like personal interests. Anything could be a personal brand. It can shape your, I guess, life story and your narrative. It's all about the narrative, right? I think, I think like narrative is very important in shaping a person's even career. And I think for me as well, even though my career seems very scattered because it goes with diverse industries, but I think if I put the right narrative into it, it does actually click pretty well. And so that can also shape a person's personal brand. I think I cannot stress it enough. Like, honestly, if a founder, or not only a founder, but just any team member is part of a team for now, but they can change their career at any time. For example, they may have to pivot to something else. And I think by keeping that personal brand, you can be flexible enough to do whatever you can do. So I think having the independence and also the independence is really important. So in that sense,
you just dropped like 5 bangers in there. So for first off, like, so here's if I had to like take the narrative, right? You've got like basically communicate, connect, and curate. Like, I think that's like a pretty cool thing to do. The narrative helps drives. And then the last thing you said, like towards the end there, with a personal brand, you can always pivot it, which I think sometimes people focus so much on their personal brand, like has to be 100%. And it's like, no, you just feel it out. You just have to start and be consistent, and you find your way through, right? Like,
yeah, just a thought there, right? Like Elon Musk, if you think about it, has a great narrative. I mean, Tesla doesn't make that much money compared to the ones that are like valued less than Tesla itself, right? I mean, also when you look at that sort of change, and like, I mean, Elon did this quite nicely. A lot of folks we know kind of changed over time, right? So I guess like that's quite nice to see the narrative and the personality changes over time. And the world is dynamic; it's not like static in some way. But building on that, like, I guess you said something about networking, and a lot of folks sort of take networking as like, hey, I'm going to go to this sort of conference, I'm going to go to these parties, I want to try to meet these folks. Is that the right way? Like, I think like, what's the thing about like, how do we define right networking in crypto? I think a lot of people are very transactional in a way, and like, how should someone treat that and to approach that? Because I've seen like interacting with you, you have a lot of people that are like from all over the place, right? That you able to pull, right? Like how can someone build something like that?
So in the beginning, I was pretty off filter. I just had to meet anybody that comes in my way, and I thought it was a good starter point. And it's a very exhausting process, honestly. And I think everyone can relate to this because it is basically no filter, but you have to be nice to everybody and kind of be accommodating, right? And in the beginning, I think it's somewhat necessary because you do have to have that sense of like finding that right person to really connect long term with. And so like that part is as a newbie, I had to do that for like several years at least. But then being in the right circle, well, not circle, but I mean, being in the right crowd is very important too. But conference wise, you have to pick the right conference too, right? You cannot just be at any conference and just be at any booth and just, like no offense, but it is definitely, you have to filter quite a bit there too. Not to say that my events are pretty good, but I think
your events
from what I've
heard are great.
They kind of are good though. Not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Especially the one in Korea, but that's my take.
Because I want to make that barrier, at least some type of a first curation that it is full of good people. And I want to make that environment for people who are coming to my events. I don't want to tire them out. I'm going to say like, oh, hey, like this is guaranteed, like that this is a good crowd of people and you will add value, to somebody at some point. And actually, in many of my cases, I've heard so many testimonies where, hey, Erica, I met like somebody, a co-founder at your event. I hired somebody from your event, and like these type of like proofs really just make my day, right? And I think that's very important in shaping a good event. Meaning, like you need to go the right type of event with the right intentions, and not just random event. So I think it really does make a difference, really, in shaping who you connect with and to what degree. So yeah, I think it's it's a subtle difference, but it does make a big ripple to your career.
I like that you're really showing there's like strategy to this, right? Because I think sometimes it's a misconception that you just go to places and you meet people and then it all falls into place. And it's like, maybe at first you kind of have to just go, but then it starts to turn into like really making the most impact out of each of those events, targeting events that are like the most impactful for your project. Like if your project's in one specific area, you might not want to go to an event that doesn't help or have support for that. So that's cool.
And I think like one of the things that I tried in the beginning is to have my own pitch. So like it's not like a formal pitch per se, but I would definitely have my story to tell when I'm introducing myself, and I don't want to waste anybody's time. So I don't want to just ramble and just go on drinks, right? Honestly, like I don't really like the parties where you can't recognize anybody for one, and you're kind of drunk, so you really don't remember anything from last night. And I'm no offense, I don't really get the value of like networking at a party. It's literally going with your friends maybe and to just like chill and hang out, but to make new connections, meaningful connections, I think those are a little bit less, like I think, net negative, honestly. And so something that you can like really focus on, see the person at face value, and be able to just like have a 10-second pitch, just like say, hey, I did this, I believe in this, and I'm working on this, right? And I like, because I used to teach interviews actually back in the day, when I was helping MBA students, potential MBA candidates actually. So I used to do a lot of interview practices with a lot of the candidates. And I used to like, just really demand this, right? This is very important. You have a very limited time frame and you got to make a really good impression. First impressions are everything, really everything. So you got to so like I had a very, how should I say? I had a pitch that really, and I had a belief that came out of nowhere, basically. I had a really strong belief, but then it really didn't have any support system. For example, like I had no funds, exchanges, no team to back me up, basically. But I just gave that pitch every single time. Like I believe in the builder community. I want to like host events like East and West, connect them and founders. I believe in like the technical, insights and blah, blah, blah. And then people actually started to like, in the beginning, it was a little, people were doubting me. They're like, oh, you're not a developer. Like, how can you do this, right? And then like when I proved one by one, like how I can prove this like ongoing, and I think as time went by, people started to believe in this. So you got to be really consistent in your pitch, but really like stay strong in your like story, basically. So I think it's really important.
You mentioned something important, which is like connecting East and West. You grew up in, I guess, you grew up in US, right? And then went back to Korea later. And so maybe there's a story there, but I just want to hear like how do you connect these two different differences? Because I personally, I grew up in Turkey, went to the United States, now in Europe, and you have a bit of a different dimension where there's a lot of developers in crypto, which I kind of relate to. But how do you play all this, right? It's like how do you play all these differences?
Okay, so going back to my background, so I'm a like native Korean, but I was raised in the US for about 5 years when I was in elementary school. So like those golden days where you can like assimilate all the culture and language, right? And so I was in Seattle for a long time, and then went back to Korea, became a very Koreanized, local citizen. And but then I was like, okay, well, I did all of my undergrad here in Korea, but I'm still yearning for a global, education. So I went to Stanford to do a master's in international policy, which like international policy was my thing back in the day. So like international relations policy, diplomacy, right? That was kind of my forte. So I delve into that more. So and then like when I was living in Korea, back after Stanford, I went to Vietnam for 2 years. So to just, experience Southeast Asia. And it's a very interesting, and I'm now in Europe. So it's kind of a interesting diversity, and also too, like I think you're also diverse as well in your background, but like really, I think really importantly, because Koreans tend to be very local, meaning it seems open, but it's not really open. And also Asia, if you chunk Asia in like one thing, it's very misguided because it's so diverse in every single country, Northeast Asia, Southeast Asia, like ASEAN, everything. So you really have to, I can't say I'm an Asia expert for sure. Like I cannot say that because I'm just like Korea specific and maybe Vietnam a little, but like definitely I have more things to do. Yeah, I mean, like having that balance, and having that local network for the US, but also Korea and Vietnam, that's really valuable because you can, and I can be like bilingual too, fully bilingual in Korean and English, not just like one-sided. And I was in the corporate world in South Korea too. So I know how to deal with seniors. I know how to deal with like, that whole cultural barriers or differences. And so in that sense, it really gave me a big opportunity to like really be balanced. And when I'm in the US, I can definitely be American, right? I can definitely, play there too. So it's like a very good balance to have. I think it's still very rare to have that person who's really balanced, meaning they can like switch from A to B really easily. And so, and you need an interpreter, to cultural interpreter or business interpreter to like actually be able to explain what these people actually mean, how they should react or respond or do business, whatever, deal with like locals, right? So it really gave me forte in many ways, not just in crypto, actually before crypto even. I was kind of the bridge in many aspects.
Yeah, I mean, culture differs, right? If you have in crypto, you have your own sort of nationality per se, and then you have other beliefs, and then you have beliefs about technology, which is essentially saying, hey, I believe in, like, for example, when I joined NEAR, I was like, I believe in sharding as a way to scale, and then other folks would say, well, I believe in L2s to scale blockchains, blah, 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 right? So yes, you have that kind of difference, which comes to my next point, I guess, right? Like, which this is a abstracted podcast. When I first got into crypto, this was Elias code in so the internal meetings we had, maybe he just said it publicly too, is like, we should kill the tribalism that exists in blockchain communities, right? I mean, and my problem with this is like, okay, we believe in that sort of sense, and we've acted that way in NEAR, which over the last sort of couple of, maybe a year or two. But we have these like new blockchains now, right? Like you have like increasing number of blockchains in Cosmos, like Bear is coming, and you have like Monad that has a different community. Yeah, I don't know. It just seems like this modular expansion is increasing the number of blockchains, which increasing the number of communities. How does this work? Like, how does this work in a chain abstracted world where you can connect all these into? All right. You have any thoughts around there?
I mean, tribalism is definitely an issue from way back in the day. I think it's been like always there are two sides of the coin, right? One is you can unite better within a single tribe, so you can have that culture internally and you can grow faster. And that's, I mean, because being in a nomadic crypto space, I think that's somewhat needed because you need to kind of like align with your own crew basically, and like wherever they are in the world, right? I think having that unified vision or goal, I think it's really important, and it did help some projects to grow like fiercely, right? And I think I can't judge that. I mean, it's actually something that's needed. At the same time, you cannot really open your perspective to other ecosystems. And for me, like I think I believe in this like chain abstraction, interoperability, like way back, like since I just started in crypto. And the reason why I'm close to like Ethereum, Cosmos, even Solana, I mean, near Polygon, like I respect all these different ecosystems that are building from scratch and having their own culture. And I truly did like want to help like good projects that mean well and that, want to like attract builders. And so like I really devoted my time to learn about each ecosystem. Back in the day, it was a little smaller than now, so it was actually like okay, it was doable. Like now, I think it's kind of impossible because there's so much going on in each ecosystem, and so like as you mentioned before, so I was privileged because like I was able to actually start like knowing the founders from way back, like when they were just raising, for example, and so I mean it gave me a really good perspective, right? And I think it's really important to for back then it was really hard to like prove myself as a person who believes in like on a chain abstracted world, basically like you go across different ecosystems, but no ecosystem is superior or they will win the race, or no tribes will exist, a single tribe will conquer, right? Because they were like questioning like which tribe are you on, which clan are you on, which why are you on this when you're like you host Ethereum meetups, for example. And so it took a lot of proving for years, actually. And now I think my point is getting across because there are many projects that are popping out that, believe in the same vision as well. So, I mean, it's definitely rewarding now, but it was very hard to prove as a community builder to say, hey, I believe in the, mutual ecosystem growth. I believe in like, chains coming together. So yeah, it's a good progress to see for sure.
Yeah, and it is interesting too because like you've been around since it was like a hard infrastructure. Like everyone was just building infrastructure, raising on infrastructure, and as the ecosystem transitions from like a heavy infrastructure to more products and apps and stuff like that, it starts to really dilute the maxi beneficial aspect, right? So for example, like if you have like say Near is a chain abstraction layer, it's going to be about the apps that leverage that, and then the behind the scenes, whether they're using any of these chains, shouldn't matter. And then it'll be kind of like what we have now, where on my phone I have certain apps I prefer, but I don't really know how everything's going on behind the scenes. So it's cool to see that it is going that way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's a good progress for sure. And I think before that whole debate about like different layer ones and see that comparison of TPS, that whole era, that was when I was starting in the day. So seeing that evolution and seeing the difference in perspective, the evolution in perspective, it's really meaningful. And then at the end of the day, you really have to see what's in front of you, like the user-friendly apps, not what's behind the scenes. I mean, it is important to see, I mean, if you really are interested in it, but as a user, you don't really have to, delve into that, right? And compare different things. So in that sense, it's a good progress, yeah.
So we had like 2017 maybe when Erica started in the industry. We had a very small market cap in the small market, if you think about it, right? I mean, I guess like then like 2020, we've seen, I guess, 3 to 4 trillion in market cap, which was like still large. And we're still down that. Like if you compare that high, we're still not there in terms of all cryptocurrencies. But we have more projects, right? right? I mean, like the increasing number of projects is there. Maybe that's because of that. I mean, what do you think about that? I think that there's more projects, which sort of increases the appetite to collaborate more rather than taking it's not a zero-sum game, and it's more of like a collaborative effort. Have you seen that sort of play out, and is that kind of the thing you're seeing?
Yeah, I think I definitely see that narrative and sentiment, like being more friendly toward or open-minded towards other, projects that are building in the similar direction. Even they don't see as direct competitors. Maybe they could like open the door for like synergy effects, for example, or some type of a merge, or like I think there are more open opportunities there. And I think it's a really good thing to see that there are more flourishing projects in the ecosystem as a whole, meaning that there are more brilliant founders that are coming into the space, even from Web2, like even from AI, and it's like very converging, right? So in that sense, there's less. It means that there's less of a barrier in crypto and as a whole. It's not like a far away land where you have to overcome all these like cultural barrier whatnot. I think it's becoming more and more approachable. I mean, it's not a humongous like rapid progress, but I think of course day by day you can see like year by year we can see it progressing towards the better. And so yeah, like I see so many brilliant founders like hacking in my hackathons, for example, and I'm like, oh my god, like this is so much more like better quality than like 5 years back, for example. And so in that sense it's great. And amongst the founders, as you said, like I think it's like I definitely see, they respect other founders in other ecosystems, as we call it, right? They're like, oh, for example, people from Solana ecosystem, they would like definitely feel open to like collaborating with Near as well. Like back in the day, it was a little bit antagonistic back in the day, right? But now I think it's definitely more open. Like I think apps, like people building applications in specific, they're more open to being cross chain, right? I mean, definitely being in multi chains, and so because it has to be accessible to everybody in the end, and so in that sense, yeah, I think the mentality is definitely getting healthier.
What are some of the steps you take to launch the perfect hackathon? And then also, if you want to talk about an event as well, like how do you think about it?
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm hosting a perfect hackathon. I have a long way to go, honestly, and I would love to like actually benchmark other hackathons that are doing so much better than I am. But for me, I started as small meetups. Like I started like very small scale, and I used to do one meetup per month, like regularly in Seoul, to see like how I can run things, how better I can run good quality, what would be a good theme, and what audience would be suitable for this topic, and so forth. And in that journey, I met so many good people, good like who means well, good projects that mean well. And I think that like seeing different crowds, like students, developers, founders, even business, BDs, Web2 friends, right? Like being connected to all different groups makes a really converging, good quality event in general, not only hackathon. Hackathon, you have to approach not only Web3 natives, but also Web2 enthusiasts, I mean, who are enthusiastic about Web3, for example. They want to get into Web3, but they're intimidated to like as of now, right? But we have to make it accessible. We have to make it open to people. Like say, hey, you don't have to be perfect. You can just try, and we'll be welcoming to you, right? We'll educate you, and that has to be the welcoming route. Like the hackathon has to be that not so overwhelming, but good entry level. So in that sense, like you just have to like network a lot. You have to have all these different types of groups of people. And be able to converse them together so that who to like reach out to when you're choosing the promoting the event, but also finding the right sponsors and speakers, judges. Like they're all like, so I get them from my own network, right? And like I choose my own sponsors as well. I don't just like open the door to everybody. And like that could be a little bit like people can judge me on this, but but I want to keep the quality very consistent and high quality as well. So I know that these sponsors mean well. They know what I'm going for. And so we have to be aligned very well to make a very successful and satisfactory event altogether. And so like even little details like this, they make a perfect event in many levels. And so like speaker wise, sponsors, even like attendees, like media, even like every single element that constitutes an event should be curated and should be strategically curated. And so it does take a lot of network power, I should say. And I guess all the years of networking paid off in that sense, because I have a diverse network of different like ecosystems as well. So it wouldn't be just like a Ethereum hackathon. It could be opening to other, hackathons, other ecosystems as well. And also like my corporate like background, right? If I knew some people from KT back in the day, and I could like reconnect with them and say, hey, I'm doing this like Web3 crazy hackathon, but you can maybe look into it, right? Or my alums from back in the day, like from Ewha University, like, they had no exposed like opportunity to like look at any Web3 events. I could say, I'm a good person, right? I'm like, I don't mean it for like there's no shady background here. Like it's definitely like, it means well, like, please check it out. So I reach out like that individually to every single group. So it takes a lot of effort. But in the end, I could really see the network power, the effect there, because as I said before, I hear so many testimonies of saying like, oh, I just got into Web3 because of you, because of this event. Yeah, I mean, I just like that. Just it's everything. I don't need money. Like that is what why I'm hosting these events, right, in the first place.
Okay, I mean, fine. Like you did networking, sure, but you do how many events a year? Like you do Seoul, you do, I guess, Malaysia, or any other ones that are like not even probably haven't seen and probably was part of. How do you manage all of this? And if somebody wants to grow to that scale, like Altan wants to host an event in Turkey, like how can one start doing that?
People ask me this all the time. They say, how can they like actually initiate any event? I mean, okay, so for me, there's an annual big event, Battle Asia, Eats Seoul, maybe Shibai Seoul Summit. I mean, they could be like the Korea week, Battle Week, that could be one. But then I do Battle Vietnam as well every year. And that will happen after DEF CON this year. But anyway, and then I'm going to do Battle Europe. This is in the making, by the way. It's not in the near future, but it will happen like maybe next year. But like trying to, and then in the meantime, there's like side events across the world. Like I do like maybe 20 builder breakfasts, like maybe every year, or at least 10 for sure, and then just kind of spread those around. And then so it's like it amounts to a ton of events. Just I think every month I do something for sure. And I think this is a little bit more extreme. I would say this is a lot to handle for a single person to like organize. But I think since my network is pretty vast and deep, I think I can whip up these events pretty easily now. But back in the day, it was really hard. Just function of one, I think when you're beginning, like stay focused and don't like try to do everything. Don't try to like scale. Okay, I'm going to do like 5 events per year. I'm going to like at the first year, like it's going to be very hard. So just make a really good first example and like just focus like all your energy on that. And then you can scale later, but it doesn't have to be big either. It could be a small curated event. It doesn't need to be like hundreds of people. It could be just like 80 people with a very solid lineup or like a solid theme of the meetup, and get a good line of sponsor speakers. And that would like, honestly, that is a very good beginning to a series of events. But then you have to be consistent as well. You can't just stop at one. If you want to keep that brand, right? You have to be consistent. Say, hey, it's not just the end. We're going to do another one. So for example, I just started a series, Open Source AI Summit. And that's a new thing that I was trying, because like open source AI is obviously a big trend, a movement. And I mean, I'm meeting so many good teams now that I was inevitable. Like, okay, I'm going to try something at Stanford. So I did one at Stanford in February, and it was such a big success that I was like, okay, I cannot stop. I have to keep this going. Otherwise, it's a waste, right, of the brand. So I'm doing another one during ECC, but that's like a 5-month like gap, but still it's a good enough gap because it's a summit, it's a 1 day full summit. So it does take a lot of, curation and planning, right? I think that's a good enough gap, but you have to be consistent, at least have a, people expecting, they're like, keep them excited, right? Keep the narrative going. And so it's a constant battle with scheduling, finding the right timing, finding the right theme. But it's a 24-hour, 24/7 job. I think you just have to love events. For me, I love events, so you just have to love it. Otherwise, it's gonna be brutal. It's gonna be so hard. So I've seen many people come to me and go, "I'm never doing an event ever again." Like, this is not my thing. Please, like, host good events. I can come to your events. So it's not suited for everybody. It's actually like you have to really love the organization plan. So yeah, so not for everybody.
Yeah, events are their own thing for sure, but I think that's so interesting about just like I'm really getting these themes from this talk, which is really like you got to really love it, and you got to work hard, you've got to get out there and be consistent, and then you've got to curate when you get to the point when you can start to curate. And I think that's like a really cool sort of like, and then just repeat, and have a good cadence going. So that's cool.
But then again, like definitely you have to keep the cadence and the consistency. That's like primary. But at the same time, I was going to mention it before, but you need to keep an open mind for like additional brainstorming, like new ideas. So I think this job requires a lot of creativity actually, because you need to be always thinking about what would be intriguing, what would be helpful, right? And what's needed from like my friend's perspective, right? Others' perspective. And so you really have to keep an open like ear and eye on everything at the same time while you're doing all these like repetitive events. So like one of the networking tips that I always will use is I have no agenda. Like I really don't like to have any agenda when I'm meeting a person. So for example, like there are many cases, especially in Korea, where they like before the meeting, they line up like these like bullet points, like, okay, we're gonna talk about this in an hour. And it's like, it's so limiting. Like, I mean, it's great that you have a clear path, but at the same time, and what's expected, but at the same time, it really blocks any room for additional conversation, meaning you can brainstorm while you're having that meeting, which I always do. So whenever I come out of a meeting with no agenda, it's always enlightening because I always get new ideas. Like I always am so like full with new insight. Like I'm so excited to, talk more about what came out of that conversation. And so some people think, oh, it's guilty to not have an agenda. Like, oh, I'm wasting that person's time. But no, like actually if you're in it for like brainstorming together, you can really whip up some amazing ideas out of that 1 hour session, So I think it's a really good trick to have actually. And if you really like concentrate in that 1 hour, you can really like concentrate on each other, hear what's up from each end, and really try to like a whiteboard session. Like you literally, it's a really I learned so much from this, and I gained so much. So I'm just like sharing if anybody's up for it. Like I would really highly recommend this.
Yeah, though these tips are crucial too, because in Web3, it is a lot of people I meet are heads down building projects, really doing that. And it's like, that is definitely massively important. And there also has to be, like, that is like crucial, right? Like there is no Web3 without people building it, right? And especially right now. But as more teams start to build applications and need to get the word out there, and it's really important to network and just grow that and be able to like use socials. So that was like one question I wanted to pivot to right now. How do you leverage social media within your overarching network world domination?
How do I leverage it? So basically, I'm connected to all socials that exist. I mean, not all, but I try to stay connected. I was this close to getting on TikTok. I mean, I'm still close to getting on TikTok. I'm thinking. I mean, I was approached by TikTok Korea, like, okay, you have to be on TikTok. I don't know, like I'm too old for TikTok maybe, but we'll see, maybe. But I try to stay as connected on social and try to leverage that in many ways. I'm not as strategic as, and I think that's the beauty of it. there's like just the fact that you're not as strategic, that makes you human, right? And I think the fact that I'm approachable, but like they can see my personal, like life there and the personal views, and just like me being just simple minded, like just sharing what I look at, what I cook, blah blah blah. That doesn't really have insights, but that does shape who I am as a person, right? And that can share like, okay, she's actually a approachable person. She's not a normie like us, just like that. But also in between those things, I plant some important announcements or important things. And I think it keeps the balance really well, because it's not just like a serious account like announcing like, oh, I'm thrilled to share, I'm which is a great thing. But at the same time, if you get only those updates, it's a little bit intimate. It's a little bit too, how should I say, too boring, I should say. It's not like as colorful as like a personal brand would want to, I don't want my personal brand to be like that. For me, I want it to be, I'm doing my job, I'm making shit happen, right? But at the same time, like when I'm like chill, I actually have other interests as well. Like I love dancing, I love, like exercising, la la la. And so I think like having that humanness inside you, it does like differentiate you from AI, number one.
Yeah.
But also, it can, I think it makes people like you. I mean, just like actually just, want to mingle with you, not just like for work standards, but also in personal ways as well. So yeah, I mean, like for my Instagram, for example, I do mostly strictly personal stuff. And I think I keep it close too, because I don't want to like open it to everybody, but that's like exclusive. And the Twitter is more open. I do like all A to Z. But yeah, I try to make it more different across social so that it's more just fun. And YouTube, it's like I post videos about my events, and I sometimes do interviews. I do live streams sometimes, and so it's kind of interactive in that sense. So yeah, I mean, I think it's strategic, but not so much. It's like it's to be a natural habit, like a 24/7 job. When you're dozing off from like working too hard, like at the end of the day, you can just like scroll and just post something. In the meantime, you can use that like little bit of time. I mean, you can't do like 24 hours of building, honestly. You gotta shut your brain down a little bit, right? And when you're doing that, might as well like take a photo of something and then just write an insight or some like whatever, right? I think that I did better than nothing. I think it's actually it's a good balance to have, actually. And for me, like, yeah, because I have kids, I used to juggle so many things at the same time that it's actually a good refreshing switch from this life to another. So I'm not like I'm on my MacBook all the time, but at the same time, oh, I can take a 30-minute break and I can like put something on Instagram or on Twitter, one tweet a day, like put a quota there, and just like, okay, yeah. So I think multitasking is definitely helpful, and everyone should do it. I think.
And you're talking about something that's really important with the way social media works, right? And because I'm a big fan of like figuring out like what does each social media platform do for Web3, right? And each one has a different sort of vibe. Like for some reason, like a YouTube short is so different than like other things, and then like YouTube video, and then TikTok. It would be interesting if you did that, because that's one of those platforms that you could have one video get like 1 million hits out of nowhere because it just catches a wave. Like, so it's like discovery, right? And so like figuring out how to like, what is your social media strategy? But yours is kind of like what you're saying is like you kind of like feel it out and you like have some basic like do a tweet a day or something, but then everything else is just feeling out like what you're gonna do. And then the second part is like being genuinely yourself in any social media platform. I find to be like the hardest thing. It is like such a bold move to do that, like to be like, this is who I am. I don't know, personally, and that could just be because I am like where I am in age or whatever, sometimes I'm like, I'm an elder millennial. Like I'm scared to be myself. Right. So
we're in the same boat here.
like not a problem.
I don't know.
If you have an agenda and if you're meeting people, I think it's so obvious that sometimes like, dude, please stop. Right? I mean, like it's happened to me a couple of times where, I was helping someone for, getting a grant, let's say, right? I mean, like, oh, I really like what you do. And like the first response, he just walks into an Denver booth and he just walks in like, oh, so would you have grants? And I'm like, dude, like, don't start a conversation like that because you're literally going to lose everyone, right? It's like, I think there's this, well, TLDR from what I've heard from Erica is like, hey, just like have a conversation with everyone and see how they feel. And then, even if for a meeting, I guess like if you're a CEO, you still need to have next steps in a call, but like have that a bit of a flexibility around like your interactions. I think that's what I've kind of learned from this conversation.
When you're mentioning about like having no agenda as well, I cannot stress that enough. I mean, of course, as a CEO, yes, it's important to have that like concentrated session, but you can also have an additional conversation one-on-one or something, and then like maybe have a more casual conversation to complement. I mean, for that seriousness, all that seriousness before, so you can have like a actually well-knit interaction with that person. So I think it's helpful somewhat to make you like more approachable, but also open-minded, and say, okay, well, this person's not too like focused. And like for me, like one thing. So I think for me as a community builder, I think it's more of a relevant topic, but it's good to be a contributor, like just to like let your like share your resources and be helpful to a lot of without asking for stuff in the beginning. He's like, I mean, it's important as to do business to say it should be interactive. It should, you should be reciprocated, or, you should have some compensation, right? And that is normal, and that is, much needed. At the same time, when you're starting out your career, when you're building a brand, when you're, want to be recognized for certain things, I think it's actually good to be a volunteer in many ways. And I've been a volunteer for so many things and I haven't been paid at all. Like I don't mind, because like when you're writing your resume, right? Back in the day where you write out your 1-page CV, you have a bullet points, and being a volunteer is actually one of the bullet points that you can put on your CV, right? It's actually a contribution. Like it doesn't need to be paid, but it is a decent performance that you did, achievement, right? And I think of my contributions like that, for example. And I was MC at DEF CON back in like 2018. It was even before like I knew anything, right? But like that experience was so surreal and it really paved the way to so many things. And I got to meet so many amazing people after that. Just like that 2 days of concentrated contribution, and that just really changed everything actually. So be open to like contributing, be open like to help out. That's when you're especially starting, I think it's very important. Just wanted to add that as well.
I would say even like being a contributor means that you don't write a CV anymore, right? It's like basically to the point where people just recognize you by the things that you've done. You don't even have to put anything there because like you've done something that people recognize you for, right? I mean, that's kind of the goal for everyone. I'd love to hear a bit more about like your work at Krypto Seoul and what's next for you in general. What's your vision for I guess this year and next year, and where you want to be in like next 5 years? So 5 years is a long time horizon in crypto.
Yeah.
I wanna like hear.
I think 5 years in crypto is like 20 years in normal lifespan. But so for me, I've been running Krypto Seoul, like Seoul as in the city Seoul, because I was based there, and now I'm in Europe more so, as you know. So I expanded to Crypto Planet, which is like a more global brand, and I think like I'm gonna keep on expanding that brand and having more events in Europe, US. Of course, I'll keep the events in Asia for sure, but I'll try to be more region agnostic, so that I could be everywhere. Nobody can expect where I am, where I'm hosting these events, and I have like a local network within each region that I can trust by now, which is great. I think that's very important when you're building a global community. You need to have those trusted people in each local area, because you can't do everything for one. So it's a privilege for me to expand this brand, because I think it's about time, and I'm ready for it. I can do it. And so I'll concentrate on that expansion. And as I said before, Middle Europe is in the plan. I mean, it's in the long-term planning for sure, and trying to be having a builder focus event in Lisbon. I think Lisbon will be the area. So I will try to revamp Lisbon as a Europe hub. And also, let's see. Well, I'm hosting Build Vietnam after DEF CON, as I said, and I'm trying to, have a more educational retreat for people visiting Vietnam, having a good intro level, meeting all the right institutions. So that's my another plan. ETCC, I'll be hosting a ton of events there, Open Source AI Summit, and then actually I'm, getting into investing, which I haven't really announced it yet, but it is, it's an alpha, I guess, that I'm sharing. But Ilya and I are investing together, and Julian as well. We're launching a small fund, so I'm finally getting into the world of investing, which I haven't actively yet, as of yet. So it's a very new venture for me. It's like a whole different scene. So it'll be a very interesting journey for me. So that will be my upcoming plan. Well, that I'll work on for the next few years, and build that brand as well. And yeah, I mean, I think I'll just keep what I love doing, which I don't think I can cut out events in my life. I think at this point, I'm just kind of I want to be event magician where I just can deploy, like curate, deploy, and just like shoot out, and that is what I want to reach at a goal. So yeah, I'll probably keep that as well, complemented with my investing, but also advisory and all sorts of things. So yeah, try to be more, also mentor for some women in Web3 as well, because I've been increasingly active in, SheFi community as well, but, having my Korean, lovely students who want to come into Web3. So yeah, just kind of being a spokesperson for that as well. So, and living the example, if I can, like showing that it could be possible to be a mom in crypto, for example, to be working very active, working in crypto, and just also leader too if possible. So just on many levels, I want to live by example. So hopefully I can achieve that.
Krypto Soul platform was a first L2 growing to become Crypto Planet, which is the platform where you can do anything basically. So that's kind of the goal. Started from the chain itself, but going to more of a platform, I guess, where you have events, investing, advisory, all of that bundled as a solution for the future.
So one package. I can, when you come to me, you can do everything. But yeah.
Thanks so much for being on the pod.
Thank you for having me. So thank you so much.